Said it to everyone.
Okay, let me moisturize the voice.
Look, she knows things. It's all good.
Okay.
There are some people coming, but we can start.
Okay, so
Pardon? Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god. Don't say
No,
that.
because I said that I.
Yeah, I know. Didn't he? Oh my god.
okay, then we can start. I heard that we spontaneously renamed this podcast to Patty Podcast.
No. It's just that we are petty.
Then we stick to the old plan. Welcome to the first event of Look to Plasma Festival at Colibri today at Sunday. We have very interesting discussion topic today on stage with Zainab and Yezenia, and they will discuss about some power structures and the discrimination structures in our society, especially towards anti-blackness, anti-fatness, motherhood, and ableism. And we have two very interesting persons here with an impressive CV. First, we have Yezenia León Mezu. Yezenia is a Black indigenous positioned psychological consultant and an education referee, working on Black intersectional approaches with a focus on body and desirability politics, and has an education background in Spanish literature, sciences, linguistics, and also theology. Yeah, impressive CV. I was reading it, and that's okay. There's a lot to say about it, and we'll focus a lot towards race and gender, mental health, decolonial structures. Yeah, one very interesting perspective from Yezenia, and on the other side we have Zainab. Zainab is born in London as Pan-Africanist, and she is also coordinating anti-discrimination consultancy with focus on empowerment, and is also an accountability facilitator. Is engaged in art and media projects with also the focus of intersectional diversity, and also producing an online child series.
It's true.
It's true.
It's so
called MJ's Diary, is that right?
Yeah, MJ's Tagebuch.
MJ's Tagebuch. Okay, I thought I should not translate this. Working a lot as a community organizer for Black communities, and is always towards creating spaces for collective learning and empowerment of Black people, but especially women of Linta, right?
Exactly.
So, the impressive people, please applause and have a good podcast. Yeah.
Hey guys.
It's so cozy. Hi. Welcome.
Yes, thank you everybody for coming, and also for those people who are listening online. I'm going to assume there are people listening online, so thank y'all.
I hope so.
Yes. Yeah, and welcome to our podcast. Yeah. This is our first ever one, so like everyone's like, "Well, you got a podcast?" I'm like, "I do now." Desirability politics. We're going to be with you guys for like an hour. And so let's start. We may be like mainly looking at each other because it's like a podcast, and it's
it's also like really sincerely, we really like looking at each other. We did this before. It's actually not the first time because we did this before. Basically not as a podcast, but we did this before. Like we chatted like through a lot of times. Yes. We're gonna get into this, but also like it's also nice to just like refer to you and try to act as if I'm not nervous.
Yeah, exactly. We're both really nervous.
We are, but it's okay. We're gonna get through it. I think first and foremost, I want to acknowledge the times we're living in right now, and I want to. I asked a few of my friends if they could, who are experiencing a really huge amount of violence right now. And so I really want to share with you what some of my friends going through these times share with me, and I want to really arrive at the moment to understand that desirability is not about who we fuck and who we want to be. It's about who is being worth of being seen and who gets to be protected. And there is a mass slaughter going on in Congo, and there is a mass slaughter going on in Gaza, and there is a mass slaughter also going on in Germany, that people tend to forget that anti-Semitism is not something that was produced through Muslim refugees. It's been a long history of anti-Semitism in this country, and I want to acknowledge that at the same time as I acknowledge that there is also anti-Muslim violence in this country. People are being targeted, places are being targeted, people are not safe, we are not safe. And that has a lot to do with desirability, and that's why I want to really share what my friend Zain said. My friend Zain said, ich bin mit Bildern von toten Menschen aufgewachsen. Es ist jedoch nicht selbstverständlich, dem Tod zuzuschauen und nach Gründen zu suchen, warum er legitim ist. Es ist nicht legitim. Es bedarf keiner Analyse. So, as we're here, I want to remind that we have to be aware of the times we're in, how to look, who we look at, who we forget. Why is Sudan got lost since 2019 from our basically consciousness? Why Congo, why people are dying in Congo right now is not into it. And it's not about putting it in like what pain. It's not about oppression Olympics. It's about what is close to us, and it has to be with the bodies we look at. Sorry.
That's fine.
It has to do with the bodies we look at and how we see it, who is human, who is seen as disposable. And I really wanted to take this moment to stand in solidarity with people in Gaza, stay in solidarity with my Jewish people here in this country who are being targeted, but also with a lot of my siblings. All I learned about anti-Semitism, I learned from my Jewish people here. All I learned about anti-Muslim racism and violence, I learned also from Arabs, Middle Easterns. I want to stand in solidarity with the people in Congo, with the people in Sudan. I think of you. You're not disposable to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think that as you were talking, one thing that you said to me I think last week or something, was, this is going to be a sweet weekend between all the sadness and craziness.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that just kind of sums it up. Like, we're ultimately here to create a space of empowerment, to create some positivity, but without ignoring what is going on in different parts of the world. And I think that also what you said about, it's ultimately about seeing people as human. And I think that is really the link with why we're here today. When we talk about desirability politics, we're talking about who gets to, we're talking about humanity and who, like you said, who gets seen. And that's, we're seeing that, or the lack of that, on a global scale. But also we get to live that on a daily basis through our own kind of positionalities, so I do think that it's kind of there is this link there. So thank you very much for for creating space for that.
Thank you. And I think something that was going a lot through my mind is also not only about visibility, because I remember how we met, and we had this conversation also. So about how we met. We met at QTB
Pop,
yeah, at the QTB Pop Festival in 2019. Was it not 18?
It was definitely 2019.
Okay. If you say so, I trust you, because I am not with numbers.
Yeah.
And so when I remember that I saw you, and I was just like, wow, I really want to get to know this person. But not in this everyone is just like, yeah, I get it. Like, I mean, yeah, it's not about this visibility of like hypersexualization, that it's also like when we enter spaces that we see someone and we're just immediately attracted because this person has a specific beauty standard. We are gonna get into this. Yeah. It was just like, it was actually how you moved and how you were expressing. How you were expressing with your hands and stuff. You were talking to someone. I remember that so vividly. And yeah, you did not see me, which petty podcast, because I am petty as fuck. I do not forget shit. So I'm a Cancer sun and an Aries rising, so of course I'm petty. But yeah, anyway, we were talking about this and how I saw you and how you don't remember if we see each other, and then we met just like really afterwards.
Yeah, we met afterwards.
We really met afterwards at the demonstration and here, right?
At a demo. You know, I have a really bad memory. This is also a fact, guys. We will get onto the whole ADHD thing afterwards.
Yes.
You know, and the baby brain, which never goes, you know? But yes, but what is funny about this story is that, like, I remember, so basically we're going to get onto it right now because we ain't got all day.
Yeah.
But we translated part of a book called Revolutionary Mothering together. And we have, I'd say, like a mutual friend.
Yeah.
Who had heard that you wanted to do this project and was like, oh, you know, Zainab's done. I did a workshop on radical mothering a few years back. And I'll be doing another one, but more on that later. And this person was like, oh, you know, like Zainab's kind of like also involved in that kind of stuff. So maybe, you know, we could both do like, I could be part of the translating team, so to speak. And I spoke to Yezenia on the phone. And and I'm like, yeah, you know, Zainab, you know, like, and then Zainab? And I'm thinking, I was so offended. I was like, but we have met loads of times. You do not know me? So it's quite funny that it's kind of like, it was almost like a mirroring of this situation.
Of the situation, like, on how I remember when we met there, I was just looking, it was like, oh, I have to get to know this person. And it's just like, I really want to be in touch with this person. And then we met afterwards at the demonstration here in Hamburg. I remember it. And then I think we lost track of how we met. And then it's not that I didn't remember you, it's just that I didn't connect your work because of the setting of where I met you and like where your body, but it was, to me, the connection was not, I did not know that you were doing radical mothering workshops here. So that's why, like, how we basically met and didn't know each other, and it's also about like how we sometimes
also kind of knew each other.
Yeah, we knew each other, of course, but I still forgot.
Yeah.
And you, like, sometimes we don't acknowledge. And I think a lot about that because I was like, how could I forget? Like, you know, how could I forget you?
But I found it really interesting when we were chatting about this the other day, about like, okay, how did we meet? And then you're like, we met there. And I was like, really? And then you're like, yeah, you know, and like, you know, I said like, what was it that you said? That you said something like, oh yeah, you know, we should hang out. And I was like, maybe later or something.
Yeah.
Because I literally didn't have time, you know.
Yeah.
I literally didn't have time.
Yeah, see, thank you. Wow.
You know, the thing is, like, and what it kind of struck in me was this thing of how sometimes, because I think that it is important to mention this before like an hour of talking about, you know, this whole thing of what it means to, like, why did we choose, for example, this term, the undesirables for ourselves?
Yeah.
But then part of, and it's almost like a cyclical thing, this whole thing of then also just not seeing oneself as a desirable object.
Absolutely.
And therefore just totally missing when
the
people
cues.
Do want to take exactly, totally missing that.
I have flirted with this person, and this person didn't got it.
I didn't
like,
get
for
it.
real. And I am a good flirter.
And apparently I'm really rubbish at it. Like, I went to, seriously, I think the same year I was at Envision Festival.
Oh my
God,
yes.
And they had like a thing there that was
on
like about, it was like a workshop about flirting. And then like, you know, and so we had to like kind of like go into like pairs and then like practice flirting and stuff. So then I did like, you know, how I would flirt, you know, did like a, and then the person was like, well, I wouldn't have been able to tell that you were flirting with me. And I was like, what? That was like my best stuff. That was, you know.
And I think we're starting with dating because I think this is like what, you know, what the common ground of desirability is, that a lot of people assume that it's just only about like who we get to flirt and who is actually seen. Like, I mean, I don't know if you enjoy dating apps. But let me tell you, I don't. I have been on dating apps, and it sucks. It sucks not because I don't think, and I think that's a process that I have to get into it, but it's basically what you were saying, like how we are used to not see each other, and people of course won't get that, like, because you're in a disposable space that is digital. You are amongst I don't know how many people, and you have to like somehow to pop out. And I'm just tired of popping out in my life. Like I have that when I cross the street, and I have that too when I have to navigate the space and people do not assume that I don't speak German, which I do. You know, I don't want to be like the center of things, but at the same time, desirability makes us center us in a way that also it's, for me, actually unnatural. Like it's not like, because it has the status of how I, as a black, fat, queer person, have to like climb up a ladder to a norm that was set up, that I don't think that it's actually cute, by the way. And the norm is being white, and the norm is being thin and
white,
blonde and blue eyes and able-bodied. So how many people, I would really want to ask you, how many disabled people, visibly disabled people, have you seen on dating apps? I have seen two, exactly. Yeah, of course
the same two everyone has seen.
Yeah, that would be the next, Germany. But we're not outing people here. So, but yeah, basically that, and how that's like always not, how that always has to be like you prove yourself. I think that's something, desirability has a lot to do with like how to prove yourself. But actually, it's way more than that, because okay, we are getting really
that's
into
fine.
this.
I was going to like say like I think that like what's interesting when I think about like dating apps and stuff like that, obviously, because, okay, so we're kind of like, we had like a bit of a plan and we're just freestyling it like crazy.
Again.
And so I'm like, I want to get into the freestyling, but I'm also kind of like, but we didn't talk about who we are. Okay. No, I'm joking. But I think that, you know, if we think about this whole idea of like what is desirability to us and what is desirability to other people, because like this whole thing of like dating apps is very much kind of like you have got to, like you said, try and present yourself in such a way that like people actually, number one, notice you, and number two, notice you in a positive light, and number three, will then go about communication with you in a respectful way. And I think that like, you know, there is this thing of either not being seen at all or being hyper visible. Yeah, exactly. So there's those two things. But also I think that like what I remember, so basically after I have a child, as some people may know, and I moved here when my child was quite young. And I remember like after moving here, like I can't remember what had happened, but I just remember something clicking in my brain, and it was like, I think I have had and I'm working on like quite low self-esteem and things like that. And I remember thinking one day, okay, the difference between people who are super confident and people who are not confident is not necessarily how they look. It's a lot about like just believing that you are like amazing. So and it's interesting if I look at like how I have profiled myself, because you have these profiles on online dating, like in comparison to 6 years ago to like 3 years ago till now, you know, in between, like not being, just being like, I can't take this shit anymore. But like, you know, it's just, for me, I'm kind of like, okay, from a time when I had actually really low self-esteem to a time where I feel very comfortable, like in myself. And, you know, like I know now that the issue is not self-love, because I'm like, in all the ways, you know, I love myself. Like I would look inside a mirror and I'll be like, damn, you are fine. Like I wake up in the morning and I'm just like,
yeah, you like, told me that. And actually, after you like, told me that, I started doing that too.
Seriously. And I think that, and so like, I'm like, okay, like I know that I'm not the problem kind of thing. But it's not, I think that it's really funny when people, and I think that this thing, when we're talking about desirability politics, if we're being truthful, it's not just about self-love. It's not just about confidence. It is about, so when people are kind of like, oh, you know, blah, 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 if you learn to love yourself, then, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is bullshit. I love myself. Don't start putting the problem on me.
How can you love yourself out of a political structure that is designed for you to not exist?
Exactly. So and I'm kind of like, even if you do, that doesn't take away the fact that I'm not the dickhead. They are. Do you know what I mean? It's not. I'm aware that I'm great, but you got to go and tell the other people to love. You know, like I'm not. You know. So I think that there's often this thing of kind of like. I mean, I wouldn't see myself as a victim, but like if we think of this idea of like victim blaming in terms of, okay, well, you're the problem. If you fix yourself, then, you know, everybody else is suddenly going to find you desirable. And it's like in my body. I mean, I'm definitely not going to be the one, you know, and without any form of shaming or anything like that. But for me, I'm like, my health is paramount. So I'm not going to be like using bleaching creams or like, you know, putting stuff inside my hair and whatever. That's just not me. Like, no, and I understand that the people who do that, they do that within a system that basically just only kind of sees them or only sees them as desirable when they do that. So this whole thing, number one, of it being like, oh, you know, black women doing this, you know, like on this whole kind of like, anyway, I don't want to use that word, but there are certain circles
realms.
Online. Exactly. There are certain realms of existence where, you know, within kind of, you know, I always say like, you know, in my experience within kind of black communities where you have people being like, oh, well, black women got to love themselves more and they've got to, you know, stop using this stuff in their hair. And I'm kind of like, I personally, I didn't even have a chance. My mum never let me perm my hair. So, and when I was older, I was like, I'm not going to do that. But at the same time, I'm kind of, I don't know, I've lost my point.
No, it's fine. Fun. I think I can pick. Actually,
like, you just pick it up from there. You know, I was trying to catch it again. It's like, no, it's gone.
No,
it's gone.
I think the point is, we have to understand that desirability is holds like a social and structural power. You know, I think we have to understand, and that's also something that Deshaun L. Harrison says in The Belly of the Beast. The Belly of the Beast. Please read that book. Please listen to that book. They say that, desirability holds both social and structural power through the affairs of sensuality, often predicated on anti-blackness, anti-fatness, transmisogynoir, cis-sexism, queer antagonism, and all other structural violence. And I want us to sit with that because it is facts. It is like, it doesn't, like you were saying about how you can love yourself and you look yourself and still you leave the house, and the perception of how the world is going to look at you is going to define not only how your day goes along, but if you survive that day.
Seriously.
So it depends of if maybe the person at the supermarket is going to be yelling at you because your child was picking something up, or if you're just like worth of the patience and seen as a human with a child that is just playing around and, you know, being a child, and that also deserves protection and just like, you know, the time also of leisure and, you know, looking around and stuff, and not being like in a Hetzjagd of Hetzjagd. I see, that's the thing, I always do that. Witch hunt.
A witch hunt. I'm sorry, I'm like, what's a Hetzjagd? Like, sounds very German.
Yeah,
it's a witch hunt. It is.
It is. That's the problem. Like, you know, in a witch, because the person sees you already as someone who is not worth of the patience, and also the time of like just waiting sometimes. Like I think like I just arrived to Hamburg like yesterday, and I was just like, oh my God, I need to find something to wear because maybe I'm comfortable in my wear. And then I live in Berlin, okay? So, and it's not that there are shops like for plus size clothing, but let me tell you, I get anxious at shopping. Like for me, shopping and I love clothes. Like I've been raised by a black Latin mother. Oh, of course, she has style, she has a thing, but she's also a thin person. My mom, and I am not, and I am also not gonna change that. So for me, I was just like looking for a simple black pullover. I just wanted to like, in case I feel today in the mood, you know, nothing big, nothing fancy. Do you know how many shops have plus size clothing in the city?
One.
That is one. Name it. Ulla Popken. Is it in the city? Yes. Okay, because let me tell you, when I arrived on Saturday, I was just trying to look for an easy peasy, not 60, 90 euros pullover, because, people assume that just because you're fat, that, more fabric is used and therefore you have to pay more, which is like really part of the industry, that fat people pay way more. And let me not get you into underwear, because bras, lol. Just saying. So I was just, about enter H&M standard. I couldn't find anything because the highest size that they had was a 46. And they used to be, I remember because I have been in this H&M, many times in my life. And this H&M, and it's not about specifically, it could be Zara, Zara. It could be Sienna, it could be whatever. It's not about the brand itself. I just go there because I can buy online again. I can find perfectly a huge amount of clothes in there. But also because I am not on the bigger spectrum. Thank you. I was just getting there, yo. It's just, it's the 46. So when we think about accessibility, what that means, actually, socially speaking, you are getting the immediate conversation of like, first of all, you don't exist. Because things that we don't see, they don't exist. If you don't see something, it doesn't exist. Second of all, you're not only like the idea is like there is a norm size and it goes until this amount. And if you pass that, you're not normal. So that's the other part of it. And then the third thing is actually we don't want to see you, because how is it? And I think that's actually where capitalism is really stupid, because if you would be a good capitalist, and I'm not advertising for capitalism, you don't know how many fat people look good. Like I have friends, like I'm sometimes like, when I think about Mary or Christelle or something, I'm just like, damn, they look fine as hell. They're always, because they shop, and we are like, as any other person interested in fashion, you can also not be interested in fashion and still have the right to find like affordable and also like clothes that just, you can wear. It's just easy.
I mean, I do think that it's like you say, like a structural thing. And I also, sometimes I do, because I have like, obviously not the same thing, but in terms of colorism and in terms
makeup.
of trying to find makeup, and I'm like, you'll have a picture of Lupita on your wall, take it off, because she could not come here and find makeup. I have to come, and then it's like, oh no, go to Monkebergstrasse. Why? Like, I don't understand why do you have this picture? Just put a picture of somebody that's just way lighter or white then. Don't advertise something that you don't have, because this is the thing, I think that like capitalism knows that it's not allowed to be, they're like, oh, they will use like the plus size models now on the pictures, they'll use dark skin models on the pictures, and you go into the shop and it's like, so where is that thing? I want that one. That one that I see a picture of, where is it?
Where is it? It doesn't matter. And I think the scarcity of capitalism, and that's actually where I wanted to go, is that if you would be an intelligent capitalist, you could make money out of these things. But you're not interested in this, because capitalism is not interested, and that's the connection for me to anti-blackness and anti-fatness and transmisogyny. You don't want this to be out there as a normalcy, and that is not desirable. That's what shouldn't exist. And when we think about how the world is based on anti-blackness, and when we talk about this, is to understand that desirability is facing a specific groups down so others can thrive. And it sounds super easy, but it starts with this thing that I cannot just get and spend my money in a shop. I can do it online because, hey, no one sees it. I'm in my home with my computer. And let me tell you, I get anxious at shops. I do get anxious at shops. But it's not because of it, it's because it's also structure, that I know the pressure I won't find clothes. So, and that's just the start of it. Like, this is just the personal and the social part of how desirability politics engage in my life.
Exactly, and
like,
I think that this, I think that like this is like really important to point out, that when we talk about desirability and desirability politics, like it is really political, because it's not just about, like I remember having conversations about colorism, for example, and these conversations being kind of turned around, so it's it makes it seem as if it's like, okay, well, you just want to be seen as attractive, like almost like making it seem like it's something shallow, as if it's, and it's like, well, there is a connect. It's number
Who
one.
gets
It's not
to be
just
shallow?
it's not just like colorism only exists in romantic relationships. Colorism exists everywhere. Do you, I mean? And so does, you know, like fat phobia exists everywhere. So it's kind of like it's not like it's just kind of like, you know, like in I don't know.
It's not in your
my own exactly my own little thing kind of thing. It's like this connection, and this will be from people who actually do a lot of work within kind of like, you know, anti-racism, doing a lot of kind of like community work, and then when you talk about these things, them being like really kind of played down and not acknowledging the fact that no, this has an impact on being able to be seen, for example. This is actually like part of kind of capitalism. When you think of, it's not a matter of these things not existing. It's a matter of capitalism is based on a premise of us wanting to reach a certain goal. So it's like, well, if we just make everything available to everyone, then where's the motivation for you to want to be light skinned? Where's the motivation for you to want to be thinner? Where's the motivation for you to want to kind of reach this ideal? So we will have the stuff, but we just won't make it readily available. We won't show it too much in, you know, unless we're kind of forced to, because we don't want people to call us, you know, like to call us out. But, you know, we will do just enough, but like to be like, yeah, maybe we acknowledge it 1 out of 100 times, but you know, but actually not for it to be desired. And this is the thing, this whole thing of like capitalism is about certain things being desired, not necessarily certain things in terms of the way that we look, also certain ways of life and things like that. It's all about like,
what
you
it's
know,
approachable.
Exactly, you know,
which
like
jobs
what do
you
we
can
want?
do.
Exactly.
Who is on the streets? Like I was thinking, you made me actually remember this book about ugly politics. I call myself ugly with a big U, and I call myself also fat with a big F, and I am very proud of it. And it's not that I think I'm ugly, it's a structural thing, because I know it's not about an adjective, it's not an adjective. And I think we have to start also putting language into these things as structures, as we all capitalize black, because it's not about our skin tones. You made me think about this book, because I remember this person in this book says that until 1992 or something, it was possible in Germany, by the way, to put people who are disabled and therefore ugly in places that they are not visible to others. So, and in Germany, and not only in the US. So there was like this confinement, I think. I will look it up and then just remember, but my head is just like going places, ADHD. But exactly, in this book, it has been a politic that on eugenics, an eugenic politic on how people were basically not visible because they were disabled and therefore labeled as ugly. And I want to talk about ugliness, because ugliness is also, we were tackling about like insecurities, and insecurities are political. Like that's something like we all have them, and some of us have them more, and it's not a personal individual thing. It's it's
ultimately a reaction, like a reaction to this is the world that I'm living in.
Exactly.
I'm living in a world where I am being excluded from certain spaces. I am being excluded, like I'm just not seen at all. So,
and I think this part of being seen is like, if we are seen, we are seen also in specific roles.
Yeah.
You know, like there are certain things we are allowed to do. That's why when I was thinking about how my CV was read here, I felt kind of uncomfortable, but I was thinking, actually, I do a lot of shit because I don't want to fit in anything that I don't decide. Like I fit in my clothes because the way I decide them. But I think for me, this idea of not fitting is something that was for a very long time a huge issue, being a person who has first generation migrational experience. So I came here when I was 13, having to learn the language, learning German. So, having to learn German. And to fit is also about survival, to being able to defend yourself, to be able to speak out. I was just, again, on my way here, I experienced a lot of things. So I was part of, I was just standing, I was having a dog. I had to bring the dog. The dog was doing...
Your dog?
No, I don't have a dog. I am babysitting a dog that I want to adopt. I want to have a dog.
Obviously, I know this.
Yeah, you obviously
everybody knows this.
Well,
you had a dog, okay.
I had a dog that I had to bring to the owner back, and then one on my back. And on my back downstairs to my gleis, I was racial profiled by police. There was a lot of police, and I think in that moment, because I'm a very clever and outspoken person, I could defend myself. And I was on my way here to prepare all of these things, you know? And it doesn't mean that I didn't got anxious, and it doesn't mean that I didn't fear in that moment because of the political times where we are in, and because I know exactly, you know, that I'm not gonna survive, and that people are not gonna have like mercy on me, especially police. So, but I was thinking, you know, I have this huge access to be in this position because of all of the language that I know my rights. I am the person who explains to others, this is your rights if you're, you know, if you witness police brutality, if you experience police brutality, and so on and so on. And that safety actually has also a lot to do with visibility, because, you know, I was, of course, the only Black person who got racial profiled in that moment. And I was just like, I was just basically like, they wanted me to open my bag. And so I opened...
In the train station?
In the train station. Okay. I was at the, you know, at the platform already. I was waiting for my train. Yeah, so... And they were like, yeah, you have to open your bag. And I was just like, yeah, but actually to just like, you need a search warrant to, if I have to. But, you know, I'm going to be nice and I'm just going to open it so I can also catch my train. And this type of way of like navigating this has a lot. And then this person, because this person didn't perceive me, even if this person saw me in my fat body and my Black as a terror, and I had the access and the safety, and I was also in the place emotionally to do this. I think that's also important to say. I was just like, I just tried to uncover and change the dynamic of it. And it could have also gone wrong. In that moment, this person was just like, oh yeah, that's actually very nice of you. So I was perceived as the good Negro, basically, who is just like, you know, accessible and not terrorist. And that's on visibility. Because actually, the fact that I got profiled was because I was seen already as a threat in my body, in my presence, and it's something that needs to be controlled and to be cuffed and disappeared in the best case. So, and then when I changed that dynamic, because I was actually just thinking about that before, it was just like, and I felt disgust, I have to say, I felt really ashamed and disgust that I had to do this in order to be safe in my train. And I think that's what, for me, visibility does.
Exactly.
That sometimes this hypervisibility makes me feel disgust in a world that deems me and deems us in different intersections as inhuman. And that we have to pave the way and be at mercy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you started talking about the police, I mean, sorry that happened to you, first of all.
It's okay.
I think when you started talking about the police, it did really make me think how, like, when we think of, you know, who is kind of seen as desirable in society, and how that is also kind of used as, you know, as like a safety mechanism. Like when I think of, like, I don't know, for example, like white women and the police, I can understand this whole thing of like, oh, you know, that's a protection for me. And living in our bodies, it's actually the opposite of that. There isn't this kind of thing of like, oh, I'm just going to like smile like this, and then, you know, they're going to be like, oh, that's fine, you don't get a ticket today or whatever, you know.
Exactly.
In fact, it's kind of like the opposite. And I was also thinking when you were talking about like racial profiling, about like, I remember when I first of all had my child, and at that time I was living actually initially in London, which is where I'm from, and then moved here. And at that time I felt like, and I don't know if it was, and I think that this is also the thing, because obviously people can't go into other people's heads and be like, why would they treat me like this? I don't know if it's because I was, you know, like I looked a lot younger. I say I looked, but I have been ID'd for twice in the past week, and so...
We're gonna age great, bruh. You know? In like 10 years, we're gonna still look fine as hell.
Exactly. Talking about desirability. But basically, no, I looked very young, and obviously had a baby with me, and obviously was black. And I mean, I don't know if it was to do with that. Obviously, like also, after I had my child, like I was obviously like a lot bigger than I am right now, like is, you know, and normal. And I don't know which one of those things was the reason, but it was like a marked difference of like, I was started getting followed around shops, or I would just get totally ignored. Like I think this happened within the course of a week, where I'd been inside a shop with my kid, and I was literally getting followed around the shop by a black man, you know, who was the security guard. And I was just like, to the point where I was then like, is everything okay? You know,
you were asking him if he's okay.
Because why are you following me around the shop? Do you know what I mean? Like, I get to be a Karen too. Do you know what I mean? If some man is following me around the shop, I'm going to ask what's going on.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? So I was like, is everything okay? And then he's like, I don't know. He was like, I'm doing my job. I was like, do you have to do your job, like following me around the shop? Or is that your job to make sure? Do you know what I mean? And then he got like super annoyed and was like, don't you talk to me like that. And I just kind of feel like this thing of like, my point is that in terms of people being able to take solace or in their femininity is not something that is available to all people who present as female. So I think that that's like something like that's also kind of connected to this whole thing of like, why is it important? Why should we talk about these things? Does it just make everybody feel awkward? Or do you know what I mean? Is there? Do you know what I mean? Because I think that this is part of the thing of like, oh look, you know, we've got these communities and we're already working on this particular issue, and if you bring that issue in again, then it's just going to create issue. It's like, am I creating the issue by talking about it? Because I don't understand. Like I feel like it's only there are certain things where I feel like, you know, if I think it was written in like the bio, like the circles that we are in are generally speaking kind of like, you know,
intersectionality.
Exactly, you know, like
BIPOC.
you know, they're like queer circles. They're exactly BIPOC. They're you know, they're circles of people who are more kind of like left wing and apparently you know open minded. But I'm kind of like still in these circles. I'm still seeing like this, you know, this reproduction of, you know, who is found desirable, who is not found desirable, who is listened to. Thank you. You know, who is listened to, who is not listened to, what type of behaviors are actually forgiven and what type of behaviors are not. And I know that you mentioned about like, you know, ADHD. So obviously like, you know, we both got it. And so, I think that like this kind of thing of like what is just seen as like, you know, oh, that person's just weird, and what is seen as acceptable in terms of like, because I like when I obviously found out, you know this, but now everybody's gonna know. Like I think beginning of last year, that I was like, I got like an actual diagnosis for ADHD, and before that, I had like actually been, and this is why I remember that we met in 2019, because like my mum passed away that year, and so that year I was like out there, you know, and basically like I think that year I'd already been somewhere, and I'd been like, oh, you know, I've been waiting for a year for this test to see if I've got ADHD. And the woman was just like, but what's the point? What would it change even if you do have it? So I just refused to diagnose me. And I was like, okay. So then it took like a couple of years longer before I actually got this diagnosis. And initially I was like, okay, this has opened up this has allowed me to have so much more compassion with myself, because it's made me understand so much, like from when I was a kid, you know, like it's allowed me to understand so many things, so many behaviors. And I was like, you know, I'm living in these, you know, these like woke circles, so I'm going to be telling people, and then they can maybe understand like why I act or in certain ways kind of thing. But what I found was it was totally like kind of shut down, like not by every single person, but like, you know, I found like it was a lot more than when I say other things about myself that explain certain behaviors, where people are like, oh yeah, of course we've got to understand that, oh yeah, that's okay. But when it comes to that, it's kind of like, oh, you're looking for excuses. It's like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm, you know, I still know that I'm like, you know, I'm messed up, I'm not perfect, but I also I'm neurodivergent, so kind of, you know, so there are certain things that we're allowed to kind of also
be
say and be, you know, and certain things where it's kind of like, nah, that's just excuse. Do you know what I mean?
And it's interesting because we were talking about this, and I mean, I'm working on getting my diagnosis. And you know what my doctor said to me when, like, the neurologist, I'm not gonna name because I still have to go there. And I told this to my mom, and my mom was just like, you know what, just take the. She referred me to another doctor now, who's gonna do a proper test with me, because she asked me for two things. She asked me if I wanted to take Ritalin, Medikinet, which is the medicament people get usually when you have ADHD, or one of them, if I want to suppress my hunger, because it makes you forget what you eat. Yeah, she asked me that. And she asked me, so she thought that I wanted to have access to medicine, so I could suppress, to Ritalin, so I could suppress my hunger and therefore eat and lose weight. That was actually what it entailed. And I'm talking about medicine. I'm talking about an authority figure who gets paid to do the job. Diagnosis. So, you know, that's on ableism, by the way. And she asked me if I have a history of consuming drugs. Because Ritalin is a drug. It's actually a legalized drug, of course, but it's actually, es fällt unter das Betäubungsmittelgesetz. I don't know the English word for that. I'm sorry.
It's a drug. It's a hard drug. Let's just say that.
Exactly.
It's a hard drug.
And you can actually not even travel. Like, I have heard of people. Yeah, you need a certificate from your doctor that you're allowed to take this if you're on a plane. Otherwise, you know what comes. So, and I was thinking about this, and I was just like, and I was so enraged. Oh God, I was so enraged. But I knew I cannot be angry because my life. And when I say my life, I mean me being able. My mom is always annoyed because I'm always late also. And I don't have a sense for time. I don't have a sense for time. I am filterless. If I'm angry, you're gonna know I'm angry. If I am in a good mood, you're gonna know I'm in a good mood. If I'm depressed, I feel my emotions the way I do. It's part of ADHD traits, you know. And the fact that I need to get to my work, that I have responsibilities, that I have care, access, that I have things, like I have to get access to care, that I have to navigate a world that is really too fast sometimes for me. My life depends on this basically daily things that I have to navigate, and that someone really has the nerve to ask me if my biggest problem, literally, is me wanting to suppress my hunger or consume drugs. Like, and that's the intersection for me also. Like, I asked myself so many times if even a white fat person would have gotten the same questions. I asked myself a lot of these things because I know the idea of me being black, of course it has to be connected with drugs. And of course it has to be connected with this. And me being fat. And I want to say something. I am fat, yes, and I position myself as fat, but I am not the biggest person in the room. I am not. There are larger bodies. There are infinity fat people. And when I think about outside myself,
it's like
how I get treated. So how, and I am in this desirability scale. I have to put the desirability scale also on another level, because there are people who are darker than me, who are taller. Being tall, black, and fat is always perceived as a danger. So I think about these people, and I think about how when they need access to health, to the healthcare system, to education, the BMI still rules in Germany. And if you want to be, I wanted to become a teacher many years ago, and I of course didn't. Thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you, baby. So, and you cannot get verbeamtet. What is the English word?
You can't become an officer, kind of thing. Pardon?
Tenured. Thank you. Okay. You cannot get tenured at a certain, if your BMI is above 20. That's still, of course. Above 28 or 30 something.
Above 20.
No. There is because the liability that you are as a fat person is that you are gonna get sick all the time. You're not able to walk fast. You don't get tenure. And if you have had a history, and it depends from Bundesland to Bundesland, because education is not a Bundessache, it's just a Bundesland situation. And if there are Bundesländer, if you have mental health, you have had access to mental health resources, like being in therapy or something, it's something that you get asked on. In 2023. Yes, that's
but
our healthcare system.
I kind of feel like the medical system, especially here in Germany, well, my experience has been, since I've moved here, I've been, like, I always say if I ever have to go to a hospital, then I always in advance like prep myself for like, anti-blackness and ultimately like racism. And I can, only imagine from like stories that I've heard from like other people, from family members and stuff who like go to doctors, and then it's always kind of like, oh, well, you lose weight. Like that. On top of that, I think that it's almost this kind of thing of like, it's not a safe space at all. Like I always like basically prep myself for it, because I'm just like, if I have to go, then I will go, but like I'm not going to expect to be treated with respect, kind of like, to the point like, and if you think like, like as a mother, I'm kind of like, if I, sometimes my kid gets sick, like, all children get sick, and there have been a number of situations where I've been like, okay, I've been to the doctors again, and I literally kind of think maybe I need to like find like a white German man to like seriously to take with me to the doctors so that I can be taken seriously, because then I'll maybe like my kid like maybe then they'll listen to what I'm saying, because I've been like I've had like issues with my kids' health where we've been over the course of a year going to doctors without like really getting any kind of answer, or like even for me myself, but I'm kind of like, okay, maybe it's just easier like at this point, like obviously I'm kind of like I want to stand for my rights and whatever, but at the end of the day I just want my kid to get like the healthcare that we're paying for. Do you know what I mean? So because we all get to pay, it doesn't matter how black or fat you are, like we all get to pay into the system, and then it's just a question of what are we going to get out of it.
And it's not about having a safe place, it's just having the access to decent human resources. Like, I pay taxes in this country, like I pay my Krankenkasse, like, I work 40 hours per week and I freelance. So at least have the decency to get me what I pay for, which is like like if we are in capitalist terms. So for me, if I go to a doctor, I just want to be treated, first of all, for what I go and not for what I didn't ask for.
I'm going to share a story. So I'm like, sorry, trigger warning to anyone who's ever been to a doctor in Germany as a black person. So basically, I was, sorry, because I'm thinking of like this, this link between kind of like this idea about like desirability and certain bodies being invisible and at the same time being hyper visible. And I remember like I basically got knocked off my bike a few years ago in Germany, and like flew over like by a taxi. Wow. Like the taxi basically like opened its door and I was like riding along. I love, like when I'm riding my bike, I feel super cool. Like I feel especially super cool, I'm like, riding along and then suddenly like a taxi door opens and I just like smash into it and fly over the door and land on the floor. So basically like they had to like, call the ambulance, like they take me. And obviously, like, initially I wasn't seen for hours. Like and at that time I think my kid was 2 years old. So like, and I was like, I'm a single parent. I don't have anybody to look after my kid. Like this happened, I think at like 2 o'clock. It was like 6, 7 o'clock. I was like, I need to, like, I have no one to look after my kid. Like I'm gonna have to go, and they were like, oh, you can go and come back tomorrow. So I'm like, going home, crying, feeling sorry for myself. Home? Yeah, but I had to, feeling sorry for myself, like, limping. Go back the next day and then they're like, oh, why did you leave? I was like, because literally the woman said that I should, like, what do you want me to do, guys? I'm only one person. But anyway, fast forward. So obviously I go there, they press my leg, they ignore the pain. They're just like, oh, does it hurt there? Anyway, and then I have to go to a different doctor's because this was like a work, it was like a work accident or whatever. Yeah. So I go to this doctor's, and then I'm sitting in this doctor's place, and it's most of the time there's like like they have like these assistants there. Yes. Oh. So like the assistants are like like the assistants all happen to be, I put in inverted commas, female or female presenting, and then you've got this doctor, this man, and he'd been asking me questions, whatever. Then the moment this assistant leaves the room, the guy says to me, "Oh, do you have you got anybody at home, like any man at home to help you with carrying stuff?" Because I'd like hurt my knee and my hand. And I was like, no, like I'm alone with my kid. And then he's like, oh, I could come and help you. And I was like, exactly. And I'm like sat on like this hospital bed. Yeah, exactly.
Unable to move.
And I'm just like, what's the actual? And at that time, I think I'd been in Germany for less than a year. I was like, I did not, I was, and I was just like, what the hell just happened kind of thing. And then like the assistant comes back in, nobody says anything about it. Like I remember I went to work, and when I went back to work, I told them, I was like, this thing had happened, and everybody was obviously just like shocked and stuff, but like nobody, like I didn't know that I could like report this to like, that there was something as an Ärztekammer or whatever, and I had other shit to do. I was like learning German and working and looking after a 2-year-old, so I was like busy, but I just kind of find it like just like a really, that's what came to mind when I think about like this whole thing of like, medicine and in medical fields, and the fact that for me it's not even a matter of like, even in medical fields, I'm like especially there. When I talk about feeling safe, I'm not even talking about feeling safe like I'm in a safe space. I'm just talking about I don't want to have to feel like I'm going to get abused or insulted or like harmed more, which I've basically, that has been my experience of going to hospitals, is like literally experiencing, like I remember like in a hospital once and literally like experiencing something which I won't say now because it was just not nice, and being like, oh my God, this is like, it reminded me of, like Saw. And I was like, because it's like these medical things, and I'm like, these people have like complete control over my body.
Exactly.
So I kind of feel like, it's not nice, but I think that it's another thing that is then connected to this stuff, which is why it's so frustrating when you're then speaking to people who apparently are all on this fight for equality with you,
who are body positive.
Exactly. And then it's kind of like dismissing these particular issues as ones that are like not so important, or not really seeing how people themselves are kind of like are reflecting them in their own behavior, reproducing them. And this is like one thing, like I am kind of like very aware of the fact that I'm probably problematic. Like I feel like everybody is problematic in their own ways, and I'm not going to be the person who's going to be like, apart from me, but I probably am. And I'm wondering, like, one of the things that, because I think this is one of the conversations that so basically when we were doing this translating stuff together, we would have meetings, with the other person who was also involved.
We were trying to translate, okay?
Exactly. And we would be like, okay, we're going to meet once a week for like 2 hours. We would meet and we would chat and chat and chat. And this is why, like, I was like, we should do this podcast together.
It was not my
we're just
idea.
Chatting for free out here, on these streets. I need someone to pay me.
Okay, come on. We also were going through a breakup.
Yeah, exactly.
We were
both not the same breakup. We were going through...
Oh, no.
Individual breakups, yeah.
Thank you. We were going through...
I mean, I wouldn't really call mine a breakup. Let's say a situation.
Okay, no, I was going definitely through a breakup.
Yeah.
That's not... I'm not even going to discuss your stuff here, but
thank you.
I'm just saying, whatever.
Appreciate
it. But yeah, I was going through a breakup. I was sick because I have been chronically in pain since... ages, and found out I have an autoimmune disease after seeing I don't know how many doctors. And we were chatting about this, and something that stuck to me was actually what you just said about this, how we are all problematic. But actually for me, it's also like, what is the commitment? Like for me, what is the commitment? How am I committed to you? And I think something that I realize about my wish is I really don't care if people are problematic or not. Like we all are, and it's just like this idea of this perfectionist also has to do with white supremacy and capitalist ways of us having to be optimate all the time who we are, right? And not actually stay in the sec, like stay in the sec and check, where am I positioned in this whole discourse? What is my responsibility? How much do I know? Like I just learned like a few weeks ago that there is no data about how many trans people are incarcerated in Germany. There is no data about this. We don't have data about intersex people, and we know that intersex people get harmed on so many ways. There is, and I think about this, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's my hypersensitivity, or I don't know what the fuck is going on with me, but actually I think a lot about what happens when I look outside and I look at structures of oppression that I not only that I experience, but that I see that exist because the world is really, you know, based on evil, and at least is my perspective, like my perspective. And how can I navigate this in a way of that I acknowledge that there are power dynamics that I did not maybe created, but that I was raised in, and like that,
and also partly, you know, like that the ones that we each kind of benefit from, and you mentioned about like the situation and how you can ultimately use your education, your socialization to be able to kind of, you know, to be able to maybe navigate spaces or navigate situations which would otherwise be very, very dangerous.
Very dangerously, exactly. And so for me, I was thinking, like, what does it mean to acknowledge like power dynamics, and what does it mean to at the same time not be at service, but not just only stay also like, it's privilege and it's privilege and it's privilege. You know, it is privilege, but it's also responsibility. And I feel like what happens a lot of in political, places that I am trying to get out, actually, because I am really, it's like really Get Out the movie. I don't know if you have seen it, but it's basically, I am tired of repeating myself. I have found myself really being, and I'm not a very patient person because, again, ADHD, but I am tired to have over and over and over start from zero. And I realized it is a German thing, actually.
What is?
You know, this thing of like, we have to really acknowledge our privilege and know, and then it stays there, and then something happens and then the next thing comes, and then we start it again, and we have to acknowledge our privilege. And I'm saying this specifically from a Black perspective, like also within our communities. I don't care what. Sorry, but I really don't care how white people do under each other. I really care about my communities. Like so I care about the communities I'm in, the people I navigate with. I wanted to say I also have white friends.
Exactly. Some of my best friends are white, guys. So. Okay. Just in case anyone's feeling offended, sorry.
I just wanted to bring it in, I'm sorry. But I have to say that how does it mean, what are care web nets that we can establish within systems of oppression? And when we think about desirability, again, I was really thinking through okay, how many Black fat people are incarcerated in Germany, and what is their access to, you know? And I mean, I'm not saying that incarceration for 10 people is easier. I'm just saying that white people is easier. Incarceration is we need, that's another conversation for the second episode of this petty podcast. But I was but I really like the name.
I like it too.
We should thank you. Thank you, Ginny, really. You know, I was thinking about that, and how even if I in my body I'm on the fat spectrum, but I'm not the biggest person. There are fatter people, there are people in infinity fats, Gordex, etc. So, and when I think about these people and incarceration and violence, I feel like I have a responsibility, like, you know, to at least. And then comes the privilege that I get to sit here and talk about it. And then, but that's not it. I get paid for this, to do this. And I enjoy this. I'm seeing my friends here. I'm sitting with Zainab. I'm in Hamburg. You know, it's good. It's cozy. But when does the responsibility kick in to actually, and what is the responsibility actually to act?
I think that this is like a really important question, but I think also that it's this thing of sometimes, if we kind of like think about, you know, obviously like there's this whole thing around like, you know, the personal being political, right? And I say this whole thing about I wish I could be like, this person said that the person is political, but I am not very good at keeping names in my head, so I'm sorry, you all have to look it up online. But you know, this thing, and I think that's for me is this whole thing of like, this whole idea of like, but that problem is out there, but like at least in our circles, everything is nice, kind of thing.
But
and
that's
not this exactly, and that's
bullshit.
exactly my point. That I kind of feel like, you know, like this thing of like not necessarily just I don't feel like it's necessarily just about acknowledging, okay, I have this privilege or I have this privilege. I think that it's also about kind of looking at, how do I act? What do I live out? Like, how do I currently either not just benefit from, because that's when we're talking about privileges, but also how do I act that out? How do I add to this structure, and what can I do to maybe not add to it so much?
And how can I build an infrastructure that is also long-lasting?
Exactly, and I think that if we're talking about things like, for example, like desirability, I think that one of the arguments is that, okay, well, yeah, I can't help who I find attractive, for example, or I can't help who I find, like this is one of these things, and this is, and so I kind of feel like, and that's, I think, part of the reason. There's that, and there's also this whole thing of like, not wanting to seem bitter, not wanting to like, seem like you're being petty, for example. Exactly. So we out here being petty all the way. But
I am super petty and super angry.
But I think that there is this thing of kind of being like, okay, let people live and like do their own things and stuff, and and not this connection between. If I look at my personal relationships, because that's where I have the most realm of responsibility, or like realm of influence is in my own personal relationships, and that doesn't necessarily just have to be like romantic relationships. That can also be with friends and stuff like that. Exactly, in those personal situations, who is it that like? I think that it is definitely possible to question. Once you understand, okay, like my idea of what is desirable is based on these social structures, It's based on these social, colonial, racist, capitalistic, it's based on these structures. So once I realize that, the next step is then being like, how can I try and dismantle that? And I feel like some people, they're kind of like, oh, now I know, and I said it, and it's enough, and not necessarily like, okay, no, but no one's dismantling that shit, because did you say something earlier on about eugenics?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was like, was that here or was that in my dream? Because I swear I dreamt last night about somebody randomly searching my bag. And when you said this, I was like, I dreamt this last night. But it happened to you, not to me. So
it's like the fact that you even dream about it. It's just
exactly.
Like, it's processing all of the shit that we see all the time.
But when we talk about like eugenics and talk about things like, desirability and what does that mean? Like, what are our kind of like black communities who are like political, I'm talking about the political ones, going to look like in, I don't know, 50 years kind of thing. But if it, sometimes I do think, I'm like, obviously, like, if I go to, and this is another interesting thing, but anyway, sorry, having 500 thoughts at once. If I go to like Nigeria, or if I go to Ghana, or if I go to Kenya or whatever, I'm still going to experience colorism. I am still going to experience colorism, but because I've lived in Nigeria for 3 years as a younger person.
I went to Colombia to the beach.
Colorism there,
and the fat phobia.
Yeah, exactly.
I was spending my money that I earned, my German euros in my country. I just went home and I just wanted to spend my money. The levels I could not chill in Colombia. It was not.
So this is the thing. Like I experienced colorism there. I experienced colorism here. I experienced colorism everywhere. So it sounds like a kid's thing. Sorry.
We should make jingles. Oh my God,
little nursery rhymes.
Yeah.
Sorry, but sorry, and sorry, and so basically, but sometimes I think, okay, like if I'm there, I don't necessarily have this concern. Like I still experience colorism, but I also see that people are actually dating, making partnerships with people who are dark-skinned, obviously, as well. Whereas here, I don't actually see that. So much. Like I see that from people who have maybe like, directly, migrated here from the continent and like maybe like but I feel like for the people who I know who are born and brought up here, like the colorism in Germany is wild. It is wild for me. And I literally just think this is also like, I don't know like if my understanding of eugenics is right or wrong, but when I think about like, what does this mean if dark-skinned women or dark-skinned people, but normally dark-skinned women and trans or non-binary people, are being seen as, they're being seen as like basically not options. Number one, that does have like a practical. It's not just about like me. Like sometimes I'm like, I don't actually care about having like a romantic relationship, but I would quite like a co-parent. I mean, like that would be because it's about resources. How much resources do I have if I'm living as, for example, a single parent? But on the other hand, what does that mean if nobody is actually like getting with these people, having kids with them? That means that we're just kind of like. Does that not mean that we're like literally like kind of like
we are disappearing? Exactly. That's exactly the same thing I was saying before when I was saying like, if you are fat, like I don't experience colorism, so that's not my place to talk, but not at least as a from that perspective, but as a fat person who is, even though again fat, but desirably fat also, because there's also this thing of the fetishism of it. It is part of desire because it's part of the politics and how actually it's about us not actually being human enough to just exist.
To be seen as a person.
To just exist. You know, and I think what you were saying about like, are we gonna, like when I think about the future, and I really don't like to think about the future, I think, are there gonna be fat, dark-skinned, disabled people? Because I had Nadine. I hope you're watching, Nadine. This is for you. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Nadine, and Nadine said she is a dark-skinned woman, and she said, Yezenia, you know what? It's that I cannot deal with also being fat. And of course, I was pissed. Was
this person themselves fat or?
No.
Okay.
It's a person who's in a norm-sized body. Okay. And this person, we were talking about desirability, and then this person said, like, if I am, on top of being dark skin and a woman in this country, if I am fat, I don't know how to survive. And if I am, and then I was thinking, and then she said that, and I was of course pissed at the beginning, and then I was just like, because it hurts me, of course, but at the same time, I do understand what that means. Like, there is like no way in hell that you want so much oppression. Like, you need, at the end of the day, Black people need to survive and thrive somewhere in this country and just like exist, and we are tired. Parents are like, single mothers are tired. Black women are in general tired, Black trans people are tired, Black intersex people are tired. We just want to exist somewhere. I really just want to exist. And when I think about the future, I am scared because desirability politics decides if we are gonna be part of the future or not. And I think that's something that we really have to take in mind when people say like, oh my God, but it's not only about being desired. I don't care. I care if I think about my mom telling me if I look pretty because it's my mom. I shouldn't care maybe so much, but I care. I care if my friends are with me in moments where I struggle. I care about these things. But let me tell you, romantical love has failed every single moment of my life. Romantical love was not designed for a person like me. And I think that's something you cannot, because we had this conversation. Romantical love, and when I think about like who has access to romantical love, and we're talking about this in a political way, and romantical love also like in love in general, in the political places where we move around and where we interact and where we try to stand for each other, is like, I need to get.
And this is what I mean. That I think that it's so interesting when we've got like I wrote a piece about this. But, I mean, I haven't published it anywhere, but
you should.
Yeah, well, I will. Don't worry. Which was talking about this idea of kind of like, I know that like obviously in a lot of kind of queer circles, kind of more open-minded circles. Pardon?
Nothing. I was just being shady. Thank you.
That you've got this whole thing around kind of like, around like polyamory and stuff like this. And ultimately, what I was writing about was kind of this thing of like, when you're, I mean, I don't know, and this is why I think that it is important to say like, I'm probably out here, like I've still got lots to learn and whatever, but I do think that it's really interesting for me that when we talk about things like that, it's always around this romantic side of things. And it's not about power sharing, it's not about sharing resources. I'm like, okay, if all of your, because obviously like I hear it's kind of this thing of, it's unrealistic to expect, the same, everything from one person. But I'm like, but all we're doing now is expecting the same thing from lots of different people.
Exactly.
But I don't have anyone out here who's like, that's not true. I've got like, my friends. But I kind of feel like when we're talking about like polyamory as a way of living, when we talk about like, if we think about like families, I think that it can work very well. If I was like, I always say a single person, and I mean like somebody without a child. I don't know why. Ever since I'm like, when I was single, I mean, when I, when I was like alone is what I mean. Do you understand? Like,
I know.
And I kind of think, I think it could, it might work well. It might work okay. I don't know. Maybe not. But I do think like practically, how does that kind of work? Because I kind of just see it as people then being like, it means that we can take responsibility up until this point, but not the type of responsibility that is actually going to mean that you have like less stress. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be like, it means like, like, it's, like we can do this and this, but it's kind of like, but like not everything is about sex. Not everything is about like being romantic. Like these connections, when we think about like, a village, they're also about like sharing responsibilities and not just like sharing fun kind of thing. Exactly, yeah, exactly. Care work kind of thing. Exactly. And so I think that that's like really interesting that there's this whole thing around, I'm poly.
Relationship
but then like
anarchism.
How many people are like, I literally have like, we share responsibility also for this child. It's kind of like we all want to share your body, but when it comes to like sharing your inverted commas baggage, that's like you're on your own, So I kind of just find that quite interesting, and like why is there so much focus on that? Because for me, I kind of feel like it really wouldn't be that much of a big deal. Like I'm like sometimes it's this thing of I don't even want people to find me attractive who are not like open-minded enough to not be like colorist, for example. That's not what I'm looking for. But I'm still looking for some form of
affection,
of affection and support and stuff like this. And so the two things are unfortunately still connected.
Tied to each other. I think we have to wrap it up, But I want to say that facts, 100% facts, and I learned throughout the last couple of years that my desire is polyamorous, but I am not. And you know why? Because desirability dictates how disposable I am. And in a scale, in a polycule, in a scale, I am here. Yeah. And I am not doing this to myself because I'm way too good for this work. I'm sorry. I'm not doing that. I am not doing that anymore. And I think like for me, that's something that, it's, and I'm going to say the word privilege because it's a very privileged position to just assume when you're in a polycule that, like, the in different polyamorous relationships, like that there is no hierarchies. Desirability dictates already. The world is based already. The fact that you found me attractive is just like, I question that actually when people find me attractive. Like, I really am just like, do you find me attractive or what I have to offer to you? And I have been having these conversations lately because, dating apps, cuffing season, whatever. But, no. Just like I have this is my work, but literally I am not setting up to be just an add up in a relationship to someone just because I know that it's not about me. It's about what I can offer, and I can offer a lot, and I had to offer a lot to the world because I knew that was the only way for me to survive, and therefore. If you don't like me, just stay the fuck away from me. I have friends. Yeah, 100%, I have my family. I have friends. And I can be perfectly fine. Like romantic love is something that I really at this point in my life, maybe it's gonna change. I don't know, but I'm not interested in it. If you enter my life, it comes with all of it, what this entails, and not only like the cute, sexy, clever, whatever part. So I don't know.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I mean, although just to put it out there, I still love love, man. I still love love. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. Like I told you, I'm problematic, but I'm like.
Fam, I don't know, man. I love love, but I don't know if romance. I am super romantic. Like I love
romance and love.
I am
but
a hopeless
that
romantic.
It's not
I think.
good for me. I think it can be good for me, but I just think that, like, I do think that, like, my experience of, like, being offered polyamorous situations in terms of, like, you know, in terms of, like, actual, like, committed relationship style, kind of, like, I think that they've been too much within this whole thing of, like, it's with somebody who... And this is sorry, like, one last thing, like, something that, like, sometimes I'll be like, oh, you know, it's, like, classically attractive, and then people are like, don't say that. It's like, it's a fact. I didn't make up the rules.
Exactly.
I mean, so I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna. I can't. I don't even have the time, man. I don't have the time to be seeing
Ain't nobody got time for that.
One person more than, like, you know, like once a week. I'm like, I've got, like, maybe. Anyway, so if we're going to, sorry, I'm just gonna end on that random tangent, which is usual.
It's good. It's good.
If we're going to wrap up, is there anything that you would like people to know? Where can people see what you're involved in at the moment?
No. Okay, I have an internet persona. I have to say two things. That is my internet account, like my Instagram account that has, like, you know, my stuff that it's closed. I ain't gonna accept people in there.
Yeah, if
like,
you don't know
I'm
them.
sorry, if I don't know you, bye.
I'm private.
But
I'm private, man.
like you know, I have
to find
an
out my email address.
Yeah, you have to find me through my email address. No, I have also for my work. I have an Instagram account. I think if you check on the Fluctoplasma, you know, you also see my website. I have now a website.
What's it called? Do you know?
www.Yezenia. I'm
sorry, guys. I didn't mean to put you.
You did not have. That was not necessary.
Sorry.
No, it's www.Yezenia, so my first name, and then the
minus.
The minus, and then my last name, Mezu, mezu.com. I think so. Anyways, it's on the. You can, if you enter, like, if you see my IG, you see the webpage. That's the only way you are accessing to me. And I have for my work also, I'm building just up this studio that I have been dreaming about. I don't know. Send cute emails, I guess. Send me cute emails, requests for work.
Emails.
I like
You're
work.
just saying this, like, stroking your hair. Send cute emails for work, obviously. Send cute emails.
No, I don't know. But what are you up to, actually?
I'm like, myself and a friend are running a radical mothering seminar, which will be happening, I think, is the 11th of November a Saturday? Then it will be happening on the 11th of November. So basically...
Do you want me to check?
No, it's okay. People will work it out. Radical Mothering Seminar. I think we've got, like, an Instagram at Radical Mothering.
Yes, you do.
I think that's what it is. But yeah, what I think would be cool, because obviously we just love chatting to each other. So for me, this has been great. But I don't know about for anyone listening. If you guys liked what you heard today, then maybe, like, go onto, like, the Fluctoplasma Instagram or whatever. Send them things, because I'm kind of like, you know, if people like it, then maybe this could happen again, you know, maybe. But I'm not going to do it again for no reason, man.
No, man, no. In 2023, especially with this economy, I'm sorry, exactly. I'm not doing free labor. I am so sorry. Like, that time has passed. That ship has sailed.
Okay. But on that note, thank you all
Thank you for
coming. We hope that you... What are you going for? Oh, my God, it's so awkward. Sorry. I just want to give you a hug.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Oh my God. So what happens next? I have no idea what happens next.
Stop recording.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you.